Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, a homeowner association fined me for over $5,000 because I planted trees that were too short on my private property. Here is what happened. Subscribe to Ripe on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. The HOA where I live can easily be described as a generically sucky one. Everybody knows the kind that I'm talking about that likes to micromanage the smallest things and try to squeeze every fine that they can. I've gotten small fines for things as dumb as my garbage can getting knocked over by the wind, my grass not being cut perfectly even, and my driveway not being shoveled in a timely enough manner. None of those things were crazy enough to make a story about, but I want to tell you about what happened when I simply just planted trees in my yard. I feel like most people would love a neighborhood where people are planting trees. My HOA though just decided it was another thing they could try and squeeze money out of me for doing. I planted 3 trees in my yard because a few years before, a really bad storm knocked down others and I wanted to replant. A couple of days later, I get a letter in the mail from the HOA telling me that I was being fined for having planted trees that are too short on my property. Just to picture it, I planted tree starters basically, so I mean yeah, they are going to be short, that is how planting trees works. I cannot just plant a 50-foot tree right off the bat in my yard. I thought it was crazy and I basically just refused to pay it. They were charging me $10 per tree violation. Every day I would get my mail and see a letter from them, adding more to the fine and telling me that unless I resolved the situation, they were going to keep doing it. I don't know what they wanted me to do, because I was not going to remove the trees and I could not just make the trees grow tall enough for their liking. It got to the point that I owed the HOA upwards of $5,000 in fines just for planting my trees too short. It was until I received a letter telling me that they would use their power to try and foreclose my house to get the money that I decided to take things on the offensive. I went to the HOA meeting to try and talk to somebody about the fines I've been getting in hopes that they would be rational. They weren't, and in front of a bunch of people told me again that there was a height limit to trees right in the bylaws and I had clearly broken it. I asked for a copy of the bylaws and went home to look it over. They went out of their way to get this thing written in such legal language that most people would have no ability to understand it. I was pre-law for a while in college and that was the only way I even understood half of the stuff that was in this thing. Finally, I found the section talking about trees and their stupid policy about planting trees that were too short. Right away in reading it, I found a loophole that I knew I could use to win against them. I told them if they wanted to try and take me to court for the money, they were more than welcome to sue me. I guess they figured it was a better idea than trying to steal my property, or they realized they were not allowed to do that. Anyway, they tried to take me to court and show the fines that I've been given and saying that planting the short trees is clearly against their policies. They also ramble on for a while about the integrity of the neighborhood and how my actions can ruin things for everyone. They basically wanted to ramble until they were forced to shut up. When it was my turn to explain why I did not pay any of the money to them and did not think I had to, my evidence was right there in their very own bylaws. To turn what they wrote into plain English, the rules state that no trees that would maintain at a height of 5 feet or less are permitted to be planted on the property in a location that is visible to others from the street. My argument back was this implied the trees that were planted were going to stay as a short tree. The thing is, I planted trees that are going to grow into big tall trees like the ones I had lost. They were not being maintained at under 5 feet and that was simply the height of the trees when I first planted them because they were starters. I pointed out that by the logic of the HOA, no trees would ever end up being planted in the neighborhood. They were clearly angry that I was able to understand their bylaws and find a way around their $5,000 lawsuit against me. The judge told them that I was right and as long as I could prove, I easily could, that they were a type of tree that would grow much larger, I was not in any type of violation. I think the rule was really meant to stop people from using mini trees as a type of fencing, but the current HOA just took anything in the bylaws to try and fine people. The fact that I had went up against the HOA and won spread around the neighborhood. The thing is, I was not the only person that was angry at the HOA and getting fined for crazy and stupid things. As a sort of revenge to the HOA, I noticed other neighbors planting trees on their property that before would have been deemed as too short. Some planting trees that would grow large like mine, and others planting trees that would grow to be just a little bit over what the bylaws did not allow. It also caused more people to try and dissect what the rules were and find other ways to get around them and get out of their fines. The HOA actually tried to open several more lawsuits against the neighbors for breaking rules that did not exist, and every single time they got shut down and lost. Finally, we make a class action lawsuit against the HOA for abuse of power and constantly trying to sue us for no reason. This lawsuit ends up with the HOA president having to step down and nobody wanting to take his place. Then the rest of the HOA falls apart and gets fully disbanded. All of this chaos over the fact that they wanted to charge me $5,000 for planting a few trees in my own yard. I hope somebody will learn a lesson from all this to just leave people alone if they are not hurting anybody. Garbage bins fall down, grass gets a little uneven, and trees don't magically get planted as fully grown giants. There are enough problems in people's everyday lives that we don't need the HOA trying to come after us over these tiny non-issues. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you still enjoy the stories about crazy HOAs, then please don't forget to like the video. Thank you so much in advance, and now let's continue. The next one is titled Manager Gets Fired. I am 26 male and I am both autistic and have severe PTSD from some childhood trauma caused by both of my parents that I really don't want to get into. I am on a few different medications for depression and migraines and have to live in Section 8 housing that I just moved into a few months ago after being on the waiting list for years. Also, I don't like being touched or having loud noises, and I certainly don't like seeing anyone take my stuff. When I moved to this city for the Section 8 housing, I had been gifted a brand new Razor kick scooter by a friend to get around my new area with. And I love it. It is black and made a bit sturdier than typical ones for an adult to ride and has bigger wheels. It also is not sold in the local stores, but they have similar looking ones in the bike department. And obviously, I don't just leave it outside when I go into the store, I fold it up and put it in my cart while shopping. I look kind of twitchy, so most people leave me alone and I am just fine with that. But touch me without consent or take my stuff and be ready for a massive freak out. I went down the canned food aisle and started browsing the chunky soup. When I picked what I had wanted and put the cans in the cart, I noticed my scooter was gone, and there was a woman with a kid fast walking away while carrying it. I shouted after them to return my scooter, but they ignored me, so I abandoned my cart to give chase. When I caught up to the lady and the kid, I tried to take my scooter back and the kid screamed so loud my eardrums felt like they were gonna pop. And the Karen mom shoved down while yelling something I did not hear because my ears were ringing and my brain just stopped working for a moment. A manager noticed the commotion and came to see what the trouble was. I did not even get a chance to speak when the Karen mom started calling me a creep and was demanding I be thrown out. I kept trying to explain what really happened, but the Karen just kept yelling over me. We were separated and I was made to sit in an office. The manager approached me and I asked him where my scooter was and he admonished me and said it was sold to the Karen and I shouldn't have tried to take it from the kid when they were just trying to buy it from the store. Then he pointed out he had to give the Karen a discount just because of the situation. I understandably freaked out and told him that the Karen had taken my scooter that I came into the store with. And it was not sold there. The manager just looked confused and I nearly broke down. Then I pulled my phone out and showed him a picture a friend had taken of me with the scooter right after I had gotten it. The next thing I knew, he was running out of the room. And when he finally came back, he said that the Karen was long gone. I pulled out my phone back out and started frantically calling the police. The manager actually tried to stop me by putting his hand over my phone and I freaked out from him touching me. He backed off because I had nearly kicked him and was panicking and saying he would buy me another scooter from the store. I told him that my scooter was expensive and did not come from their store and I wanted mine back. Well, it turned out I had managed to dial 911 because the police were already listening in on the line and the operator was trying to get my attention. I just told them to send someone over because my property had been stolen. I had to wait for another hour at least while police showed up and then went through the CCTV footage. It clearly showed me entering the store with the scooter and showed the Karen and her crotch goblin taking it from my cart. And the mess that followed when I tried to get it back. I wanted my scooter back and police had to find the Karen from the camera footage of the parking lot. They found her address by running her plate number they got from the camera footage and I got to ride in the back of a police car while we went to her apartment. The officer knocked on her door and I did not hear the situation because I was still sitting in the back of the car with the windows closed. However, the Karen mom looked really angry and eventually brought out the scooter after some back and forth. She practically had to wring it out of her kid's hands. I got let out of the car and they asked me if I wanted to press charges for assault because their mother had shoved me. She looked ghost white when I said I did want that. But the Karen started crying and begging me. She said that she honestly thought it was something the store was selling and it was her kid's birthday. I yelled that did not excuse her stealing from someone else's cart, let alone from a legally disabled man. Her kid was also loudly crying and my ears were hurting again. So I said I would not press charges on her if she didn't come near me or my stuff again, but I wanted something done about the manager at the store for letting this happen. And I was ready to ride my scooter all the way back there, but the police convinced me that it would be better if I just went home and calmed down. I later learned on my next visit to the store a couple days later that manager was fired over what happened because he already had a few complaints against him and did not bother to check that the scooter was not one of theirs. And the store gave the Karen and her kid a replacement Razor scooter that they had in stock because she had already paid for one. But she was also banned for 6 months from the store for shoving me and stealing my property. I was also given a $50 gift card for some free groceries since I was not able to buy anything that day that mess happened. Now, every time I go into that store, a few of the employees know me by name, and one actually told a random kid to leave me alone when he asked about my scooter. I certainly keep a better eye on it now too. I've also since added a name tag on the underside of the scooter with my full name on it just in case this happens again. And the next one is titled Revenge on My Awful Ex. This all started several years ago during my parents' divorce. However, the revenge took place this November. Backstory: growing up, my father was an emotionally abusive piece of poop who got off of religious authority and controlling every aspect of our lives. We were kept so isolated and made to fear the police/CPS to the point where we thought it was normal. After I went off to college, my little brother came out as gay and my father started beating him, unbeknownst to my mother and I. When my brother threatened to tell my mom about this, my father kicked the then 15-year-old out of the house. My mother was understandably horrified by this and tried to get my father to see sense, at which point he started hitting her. Long story somewhat short, I got my mom out, my brother went to live with friends and divorce proceedings were started. It was nasty, no one wanted to go to the police, father was friends with the local small town cops, and thankfully, my sperm donor agreed to a no-fault divorce. While my mom was cleaning out her stuff from the house under the watchful eye of her amazing co-workers, she found my father's discharge papers, and this is where the plan started. You see, my father spent his entire 25-year marriage telling everyone that he was a Special Forces veteran who had been awarded a Purple Heart and Bronze Star, which were both coincidentally destroyed in a house fire, along with all his uniforms and paperwork. But here were his discharge papers, and they clearly stated he was given an other than honorable discharge after 4 years in the motor pool. Not wanting to be seen as the vindictive ex-wife, my mom quietly took the papers and did not tell anyone for years after my father moved away to a new state to join a militia. When she finally told me while tipsy this past year, we hatched a plan together. Over the next few months, we snooped on social media to make a list of his former and current employers, family, major friends that we knew of, and his new church. She enlisted our extended family, I and my college friends from all over the country. In November, we each purchased Veterans Day cards and wrote out messages such as Stolen Valor, Motorpool, Pretender, etc. Everyone attached a photocopy of the page listing his discharge. And then we sent them on the same day from the nearest major cities with the return address listed as his current church. They arrived on or around Veterans Day from Atlanta, Orlando, Washington, D.C., New York, St. Louis, Kansas City, Seattle, Portland, LA, Houston, Ontario, London and Edinburgh. Immediately, my mother was inundated with calls and emails from people who had no idea and couldn't believe he would lie like that, and we are so sorry for not believing her/my brother. My stupid dad sent a nasty email implying horrible things if he ever could prove my mother did this, which she forwarded straight to her lawyer along with the nasty letter from his more vocal supporters. Now most people in our hometown look at her as the battered spouse who walked out with her head held high rather than that tramp who divorced such a godly man. My little brother has no idea we did this. He did not want anyone to confront my father, but later told me he got a random call from our old pastor apologizing for kicking him out of the church over my father's lies. And now I can finally sleep well at night with the knowledge that his reputation is in shambles by our hands. Revenge truly is a dish best served cold. Or, in this case, ripe stars, clearly ice cold or rather frozen. That was a brilliant revenge story. And if you still enjoy the revenge stories, then please don't forget to like the video, which would be very much appreciated. The next one is titled Squatter Problems. First of all, I must explain that I am not from the US, and even if I don't know exactly why, my country's laws make it very easy for squatters to steal houses with no consequences. I think it is because if there are kids or pregnant women, the law prevents the police from breaking into the house and forcing them to leave, but I'm not sure about that. The only thing I am sure is unless the police manages to find a way to enter the house without breaking in, they usually do nothing but wait for the squatters to leave on their own. So, the grandfather of this friend of mine went out for some business, as he often does. He owns a small business and sometimes still works on it, and spends all day away from early morning to late evening. When he went back home, he found the door lock has been changed and he couldn't get in. So he called the police and they found a family of squatters, a man, a pregnant woman and 2 young kids who broke in during the day and changed the lock. They probably checked the house for a while because they moved straight in, bringing all their stuff, which probably took a few hours. The cops tried to talk with them and convince them to leave, but they have been ignored. My friend then, being told by his grandpa what happened, grandpa had to go to sleep at my friend's parents' home, chose to go take a look at the house from the outside the next day in the morning. Luckily, while my friend was watching the house, the man left from a window, probably trying to be unseen by the neighbors which had been warned about them, and went away, leaving the window closed but unlocked. So my friend called the police, jumped in from the window, called the police, and after a short fight with the woman, he got beaten on the head with a frying pan and kicked her away. He unlocked the door from the inside, allowing the cops to enter and force her and her kids to leave. They have been charged for several crimes but not arrested. The man was also missing. He probably came back, saw the cops and escaped unnoticed, and luckily the house was not so much of a mess. In the end though, they've been lucky. Most times squatters are far more problematic to remove. It usually takes weeks if not even months to do so. They often have dogs and they rarely get prosecuted because it is unlikely that they get arrested on the spot, and if they manage to leave, they just disappear. Also, in most cases they wreck the houses they occupy. I know of people that found everything destroyed or stolen, and people that found dog poop everywhere too. And yeah guys, let me tell you, that is definitely not a country that I would like to live in. Or at least not a country where I would like to own property. We have already heard stories from several Western countries such as the UK where it can be really difficult to get rid of squatters. However, this story sounds even worse than that. The next one is titled, They Sued Us Because of Our Dog. Our neighbor's dog would run around the neighborhood with no one to be found. He frequently would come to our backyard's gate and bark until I would let my dog outside, and this went on for months. Eventually, we ended up letting him in our yard to play with my dog because he would not stop barking at her through the fence and we had no way of taking him home. He would not let us get close enough to check his tag. He came into our yard a few times and we never truly knew his gender. He was a small furry dog. Well, one day we had let him in the yard to play, and when my husband came out, they were attached. We stopped letting him in our yard after that, but he would still come over and bark like crazy, trying to get us to let them play. Fast forward, and we took our dog to the vet, and sure enough, she was pregnant. At this point, I had found out whose dog it was through another neighbor, so I told them that she was pregnant, which was a big mistake. They asked if they could have one of the puppies, and I told them we could work out a deal. They thought they would get one for free, but after medical bills from a sick puppy who ended up dying due to hydrocephalus and taking time off work to care for the sick puppy, we needed the money back from the 4-dog litter. We tried to come to a compromise, but ultimately they disagreed and took us to court. They brought their children to court as some sort of lesson on defending yourself. The judge essentially said that they had no case because they shouldn't be allowing their dog to roam free in the first place, but that they were awarded $400 of the $1,200 they sued for because the judge was feeling generous, I guess. Long story short, don't let dogs in your yard, and if they get your dog pregnant, don't tell the owner of the persistent, annoying dog. On the bright side, he stopped coming over after that. Edited to add, yes, spay and neuter your dogs. I learned this the hard way. I did make mistakes too, as I was 19 with my first dog. I'm the first to admit that this was an expensive lesson. Now all my dogs and currently and in the future will be fixed.